Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the third installment of our Artist in the Gallery series. Today we will be speaking with educator, author, poet, and artist Denise Lajimodiere, who's joining us from up in Belcourt, North Dakota, Turtle Mountains. Denise is a birch bark biter, which is a very ancient art form that's practiced in her community. So she's going to talk today about her time as a Native American artist in residence, what she's done to kind of revitalize that art form. So before we start, I'd like to say that Minnesota is Dakota and Ojibwe homeland. It's centered within Dakota creation stories and is also an important place in traditional Ojibwe history and the histories of other Native nations. It is both an ancestral and contemporary home to many Native people. The idea of home and homelands plays a central role in our recently developed exhibit, Our Home, Native Minnesota. So the series again is called Artist in the Gallery. We are not in the gallery. We are in collection storage, which is in the sub level of the History Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. And today we're going to be looking at some of Denise's work and some of the historic pieces from the collection as well. Denise, would you like to introduce yourself?
Pujunin, Wabanung, Ikwe, Dejinakaz, Ashijak, Nido Dame, Mikanakwa Jun, and Dunjiba. Mingwich Kakina Awaya. So thank everyone for being here today. I am I'm from the Turtle Mountains and enrolled citizen of the Turtle Mountain Band of Ojibwe, and we are in north central North Dakota. And I recently retired, 2 years ago, I retired as a professor at North Dakota State University, and bought a little cozy cottage here on the lake out in the bush here, and I have two lovely birch bark trees here that I get to see every day out my windows. So very happy to be here. Language.
Yeah, we're very, very, very happy to see you, Denise. It's been a while since we've seen each other in person. I think you did residency in 2015, and normally we run into each other, and it's been a while.
Yeah,
it's kind of a drag, but we are getting through it, aren't we?
It is sad, but yes, we are.
Yeah. So
keeping busy.
We are gonna jump in with some questions. If anyone listening, joining us out there in internet lands has any questions, you can leave them in the chat space, and we do have a Q&A period towards the end of the program. Okay, so Denise, the first thing I want to ask you is Mazinabakajage. That is birch bark biting. Probably not a lot of people have heard about that art form. Not a lot of people practice it. Would you be able to explain it to us in a kind of a simple way, and then maybe we'll talk about your process in terms of gathering it and when you make it and all that other great stuff?
Well, I've been taking Ojibwe language classes for a while, and from what I understand, the word Mazinabakajage means just pictures on bark, or pictographs on a bark. It's just very simple. So do you want me to say how I got involved in it?
Yeah, maybe try to explain it to somebody who's never heard of what it is.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we take paper birch, which is the white birch, and we gather it in a very sacred way in the spring, because that's when the sap is flowing, so it pulls off easier. But we only cut a few layers so we don't harm the tree. So I go out in the spring and harvest the bark or gather the bark. And then I like to sit on the deck when it's really hot, because there is an oil in the birch bark and it peels just like butter. Just the peeling alone, I can just peel piles and piles of it. It's very relaxing. And like everything else that you do in a good way, you need to be of a good mind and be peaceful and be thinking a good way and even be prayerful. So then you peel it onion skin thin. And then the the trick of the trade is just folding it different ways, and I'll show you later in the program how it can fold it 100 different ways. And I use my eye teeth, so that's why it's called biting. Some people I've been interviewed and they say that I chew, like a chipmunk. It's like no, and then they go, her bark is as bad as her bite. Like no, I don't like those headlines. But you bite down using your eye teeth, and it's like a gift, or I'm very lucky to be able to have both my eye teeth that I'm able to bite with. I've done, well, Ben, that I've done a lot of shows with people, up to 50 people in the audience, and some people just don't have the teeth to be able to bite. So it's just pure luck. I think our well, serendipitous. I guess nothing is really pure luck, but I'm very fortunate that I'm able to do the biting. And I had a mentor. I have a mentor, Kelly Church, and she's from Michigan. She's the one that showed me all the tricks of the trade. She was very, very generous with showing me how to do the bitings. And so I, in turn, am willing to teach anyone about the biting. So I like to peel in the summer, and then in the winter time, like coming up, for some reason, when it's dark outside and I can't be outside anymore, it's 80 below zero wind chill, I like to sit quiet, no TV or no radio, and do my bitings then, or do all the other things that I do with the birch bark biting, usually in the wintertime. That's just me.
Well, so before I ask the next question, I'm going to say that you tried to teach me once, and I have a considerable underbite, and my teeth don't line up. And so, poor me, I had to use my front teeth, and I ended up making sort of the final product just looked like a couple little sad little circles.
But they were circles. Cool.
Yeah,
you did good.
I did that.
Yeah.
So how old of an art form do you suppose this is? And this practice,
Yeah.
I know your cultural affiliation is in the Turtle Mountains, so Ojibwe and Cree and Métis. But are there other cultures that practice this? Is it common? Is it not common?
I think I know it's done wherever birch bark trees grow. I have one document that says Cree, Ojibwe, Micmac, Passamaquoddy, Iroquois, Eastern Ojibwe, Winnebago, even Blackfoot, Central Algonquin, Hudson Bay region. So I think wherever birch bark trees grow, the tribes were able to do the birch bark biting. And from what I understand, from research I was able to do through the artists in residence, well, that's pre-contact. It's before Columbus came here, which I just love. And it was used, of course, it was used in making maps, I found. It was used as, like, you'll be showing some things for doing quill work. And then, of course, when we got beads after contact, we beaded designs on it. So there's not a whole lot of patterns out there anymore, because they're actually utilized. They're actually beaded and quilled on top. So yeah, I love that it's pre-contact. It's the oldest known paper. So it was used as paper and made marks on it. Or like I saw one where someone could actually bit like a trail. Like I could do a biting from Belcourt here of where to go and how to turn, where to turn, and give it to you, and have a map for how to get to my house. So that was pretty cool to find all of that information out.
Lovely. Would you call it, are there a lot of people practicing this art form? Or when you first kind of dug into it, did you have, besides Kelly, did you have anybody to turn to? Is it something that you grew up with, or is it
yeah. Right. No, I didn't know anybody other than what I saw that Kelly did, and we were at the Idle Jorg at the time. So I ran home and I ran to a close friend, Judy, and I said, Judy, look at this. This is birch bark biting. And she said, and I've known her for 55, 60 years, and I learned something new every day from her. So, oh, Denise, she said, when I was a little girl, so this would be back in the 50s, Mom and my aunties and grandmas, we'd go out in the bush and pick June berries. And when they would sit down and have lunch, they would just go peel some off the tree, and they would have contests about who can make the prettiest or the best birch bark biting. I said, oh my gosh, Judy, we used to do that here in the Turtle Mountains. And since then, I also found that Grandma Great Walker who has since passed away, she would literally bite a double, and then she would do beadwork on her moccasins. She would bite the floral designs, and I knew her. She's the one that gave me my tribal name and through ceremony and so on. But I didn't know that she did birch bark biting. So it was done here in the Turtle Mountains, but it had died out. Nobody was doing it anymore for about the last 40 years that I know of. So that was pretty exciting. I was thrilled. So then sort of started seeing more about other people that were doing birch bark biting, especially Pat Bruder. I hope she's listening, from Canada. She was living in Winnipeg at the time. Her bitings are out of this world. I don't know how she does all kinds of beautiful pictures, and she can do bees, which I can't. I can't do butterflies, so she does an incredible. To me, she's the queen of birch bark. And since then, we've come up with, well, mostly it was for females. It's mostly a woman, but it's, like all kinds of art. Nothing stays the same. So there's a Dylan Miner out in, I think he's in Michigan. He does some beautiful bitings, and I'll teach anyone. We have some guys here, Broderick Bruce. He's doing some beautiful bitings, and that's fine with me. So I'm starting to see more and more people from Canada especially are doing bitings. So the fun thing is, I've been doing this now since about 2010. Is that every time there's a new biter that pops up, they'll say, "Oh, it's a dying art," or it died out. Well, not anymore. In the past 10 years, there's many more of us that are doing the biting. I think I'm the only one in North Dakota, though, that is active as an artist with framing them and selling them, and doing shows and things like that. So, but there's started to be more and more, probably maybe still only 10 people or so in Canada and the United States, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But it's becoming more and more people, which I love.
I love that too. It's amazing. I know, 5-10 years ago when people would call us up or email us and ask, do you know anybody who practices this art form? And back then I didn't,
Yeah.
It's not that common. And I know when we held some of your public programs around here in the cities, they were packed. People were very interested in this art form. What I would like to do right now is I'm going to ask you about, I'm going to try to do a little switch here over to show a historic piece from the collection so that people at home know what we're talking about. And I put it on a light box.
Yeah, cool.
So you can see it. And I want to ask you, while we're doing this, what was it like to see some of these historic pieces in the collection? This is a biting.
Yeah.
Some of these bitings are from 1960s, but some of them are probably from the 1930s and 1920s and 10s. Had you ever seen any of those before you started doing your residency here?
Yeah, no, I hadn't, and I'll never forget the moment when you showed me all those bitings. It just did something to me. I'd been practicing and emailing with Kelly Church and so on, and just doing my own for a couple years, I think, before I got the residency. So I thought I was like the only one, doing this. So to see other people's bitings absolutely blew me away. I mean, I was overwhelmed. It was wonderful to see the other bitings that were in the collection. Yeah. So I love these that you have the light behind them, because when I do the workshops, when people do the biting, fold it up, and I show them how, and they do the biting, then they slowly open it up, and then I'll have them hold it to the light, and the look on their faces when they see a design like that is absolutely like Christmas. I'm a teacher, so it's sort of like when my students would all of a sudden they got the math problem, and that the look on their face, it's the same look that I would see when they would open up their biting and hold it up to the light. So I love that. I love seeing that. So
Absolutely. And then what I also want to do is, earlier you mentioned about the oftentimes these would be used as maybe templates for either quill work or for beadwork.
Yeah.
And I grabbed a couple other examples here. I'm just going to hop right over here and grab them and hold them up to the camera. So I'll start with this. This might be difficult because it's in this mylar sleeve, but if you can see that, that's a it's sort of like a star.
Yeah.
Yep, this is one of the older ones that we have here. So, this is also what you're talking about. This is quill work, porcupine quill work on birch bark that potentially could have been a pattern. The biting could have been a pattern, or sort of a prototype for a little box like
Absolutely. Cool.
like this as well. And so I know these are things that you looked at while you were in, during your residency as well. I'm also going to say right now, I am not wearing gloves today because everything I'm touching is very, very, very delicate. So I have incredibly clean hands. So I'll always get some comments about, whether I'm wearing gloves or not wearing gloves or whatever. Clean, soft soap, mild soap, washed.
Okay, good.
Okay. So,
did you want to show the pieces that I did that I quilled on? Yeah, there you go. Okay. Okay, reading my mind. So when I read through my research that we actually beaded on the pieces, this is my first and only attempt. And you can see it's kind of crooked with the beadwork and so on, but I did try. I haven't done one since because this was a lot of work. But if someone wanted to commission a piece or something, I would certainly do it. But this is my favorite. This is quill work. And the cool thing is that before I attempted that, I went to visit, I spent the day with Mel Losh, and he had all the tricks of the trade of doing quill work on birch bark and his baskets. So after visiting with him, then I came home and I worked on this piece. And it's so pretty, but again, I haven't done another one. I'll do some little earrings I can show later, some earrings that I do with quill work, but that was a lot of work. But I had to do it because that's what I learned, from the residency. I learned that we beaded on these pieces and we quill work, so I had to try it. So those are, hopefully now they'll become historic pieces.
You're beautiful. And like you mentioned, one of the things that we do with each artist in resident that we work with is we purchase work and accession it, into the permanent collections here. So I did pull a few of your pieces. I want to show one of my favorites right now. So this one, I'm going to hold it this way and try hard without the glare. But this one was really special. I know this bark was really special to you. You want to talk about this one?
Yes, that bark was given to me by Pat Cruz. Pat and I work work together. What pieces, like this is his piece behind me, so he does bigger pieces that he cuts out. But the part of the bark that he doesn't use, he gives to me, and then I can peel it and make, and cut out, smaller pieces that I use. So he gave me that. It's purple bark, and he said it's very rare, and I haven't seen it. I haven't been able to peel any or find any in 10 years since that. So that was a special piece. Yeah.
I remember he did a little bit of work. Someone had gifted him with some bark that was like 80 years old, and I think that might have been the batch. So kind of, yeah.
It was off a wigwam, so I have his basket up here on one of my bookshelves. So yeah, I bought one of his baskets from that 80-year-old bark.
Yeah,
that was remarkable. So we use every part of the bark. So all these pieces that, like what else, I have little pieces right now that I did today, cutting out this, and everything goes into the fire. Or if there's people that pass away, we have a spirit fire, so they'll start the fire with the birch bark. So I don't throw or toss any bit of the bark away, and neither does Pat or any of the birch bark biters. So every piece is used, every bit.
So there's definitely a cultural significance to the material that you're using.
Yeah, if I can, I found, again with my research, I found early uses of birch bark. Well, we're still using them, but it's an old document. There's 102 uses of birch bark. So just a few of them. I'm not going to go into all of them, but of course, the quill work. This is one of Mel Losh's designs that a friend gave me. I just absolutely love it. And then, of course, we have baskets. This is a little tea kettle basket full of tea. And then here in the Turtle Mountains, we do have birch trees. But I was going to say that I don't peel here in the Mountains. I have a friend in the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, and we go way deep into the forest and we'll peel our trees there. Our trees here were pretty much used for wood, for to survive, for our wood stoves. So the trees to me are young and they're too small. So like the 2 trees that I have here, I promised them I wouldn't peel. I wouldn't peel them. They're like grandmother trees. They're beautiful. So but someone is going around, and there are trees still here. So the baskets, of course, bowls. Oh, I got to tell you a cool story. If you know Christy Belcourt, I went up to her camp north of Elliott Lake. Like a 3-day drive for me anyway. And there was an elder there that cut the bark, folded it into a basket, went off to the sap, and put sap in the where she had sewn it together with a natural root, basswood, and we made a fire, and then she went down to the coals. She put the basket on there, and she filled it with water and with wild rice and corn and carrots. And honest to God, it never burned, and it boiled, and I ate soup out of birch bark basket, like tonkayosh, like long time ago we say. That was so thrilling. I hope someday to be able to do that again, or to figure out how to do that. But that was fascinating, and everybody said, "Didn't it burn?" Nope, it did not burn. It sat on the coals. It was so cool.
That's
So
beautiful.
drums, huh? Isn't that cool? I got to
Yeah.
see that. I love it. So of course it was used as paper, maple sugar, uh, to put maple sugar in. I want to talk more about it being a medicine. So rattles, porcupine quillwork, we did trays, and of course our wigwams and our jiman, our canoes. It was everything to us. Birch bark was everything to Ojibwe people. So I love learning all of that. One of the coolest things I learned was the medicine. And one of the medicines is chaga. And so it comes in big clumps like this. I have not found any on the trees because our birch trees are so far apart, and I've gone clomping through the bush, but I haven't seen chaga here. But this comes from White Earth, from friends in White Earth. So it's usually black on the outside, and it's on the outside of the tree. But if you go on YouTube, you can see how to, I would cut this. I have smaller pieces here in the jar, and it tells you how to simmer it for a long time, 8 hours or longer, and it makes a real dark tea, almost like it was used like as a coffee. And so I don't know what I do with it now. I haven't done that yet, but I probably will this winter. But someone else sent me a bag of powdered chaga, and it's only like 1/8 of a teaspoon will make a 8-ounce cup. So I drink chaga all the time. I said I was going to be drinking it during this during this broadcast, but I forgot. So I have a lot of powdered chaga before I start doing making this. But there's scientific medical proof that it's anti-cancer, and I should have looked it up, refresh my memory. But there's all kinds of it's just an incredible all over body medicine that we have. And again, chaga is used. In fact, I was ordering my chaga tea from Russia for a while. So Russian people know, they do a lot of artwork too with it. So it's a remarkable medicine. And there's I think a Nana Bajou story behind it. It's usually when the tree is dying, I believe. But it's like the creator said, "Oh, even as I'm dying as a tree, I'm going to give medicine for you to continue living as Anishinaabe people." So we have to be careful with it, because I'm seeing that the non-natives are just wiping out some of the forests up in Canada North, that they're just, once they found out about it, they're, so we have to deal with conservation. We have to be careful with how, because it takes a long time to grow. So that's a cool story. And then there's also catkins. They look like little fuzzy caterpillars that come out in the spring. So I take those and I make a little powder and I put in my yogurt. So it's also a medicine. And what I haven't tried yet also is that the leaves in the spring, you can make a tea out of them also. And I saw one elder from Canada that would scrape the I have a big piece here somewhere that she would scrape the white off, and then there's whoops, and then there's that's good. I needed that. And underneath it is an orange powder, and she would use that orange powder also in medicine for who would come to her for needing help, and make it as a tea. So I've learned all these things, and since the residency, the journey I went on to learn more about birch bark, and I absolutely love it. I love the sound of birch bark. I love the sound when we peel it apart. I tell everyone to be quiet and listen to the ticking as you peel it apart. I love the sound when we're biting. Oh, there's one other thing too. Some of the students will notice when they're biting that there's sort of a powder on it, and there's no taste to it. It can't make you sick. It's not a chemical, but whatever it is, it's when we would store our food and put it in cache pits, we would wrap birch bark around it and store it in cache pits, and it would preserve our food. We would dry our food and preserve it. The other cool thing about birch bark is, like, you can see that this is all curled up. So in the summer, I'll ask people, how do you flatten birch bark? And they will put it in water. Well, I can put this in the lake here for 2 years and take it out, and it'll still be curled up. So it's heat, because there's an oil. I found out through research again that there's an oil in birch bark. And so I put it outside, and I put rocks on top of it in the heat, in the sun, and the rocks and so on help it flat. And then an old Indian trick during winter, when I can't go outside and it's cold, I'll turn on the oven to about 200 and put a little piece in the oven for just a few minutes, and then lay books on it, and it flattens out. So yeah, old Indian trick. So
Old Indian trick. I love it.
So heat is what will work with it to flatten it out.
So you've shown us a piece a couple times. It's paper thin. You said it's like onion skin thin. Yeah. Would you mind doing a biting for us right now?
Okay, sure. All right. So we take the paper thin, very, very thin, fold it in half again, and then you can fold it a myriad of ways, different ways. I think I'm going to fold it just twice, just to make sure that the biting will show through. And so what I found with myself and other birch bark biters is that you can kind of see the design that you want in your head, because you can't see what you're doing once it's in your mouth. So I usually close my eyes, because somehow I can kind of see if you can understand that. So whoops. Okay, I heard it said his mute was off. All right, so I'm going to try to bite. With the microphone, I suppose you can hear me biting.
But it's a lovely sound.
So it sounds like a chipmunk. So I take it out and kind of look at it and figure out. I can use my fingernail to see where I want to go. Try another over here. So this be a flower. I can do turtles. And of course, my favorite, dragonflies. It took me years to figure out how to do my dragonfly, so it was my design and not anyone else's. So now the trick of trade too is kind of move it back and forth to loosen it up, loosen the layers up. And then very carefully, because it will rip, so it's like opening up a Christmas present. Can you hear that sound? I love that.
Yeah.
Can you hear it? Cool.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So what I'm going to try to do is backlight with my phone, and hope I don't blind anybody. But this one turned out well. How can you see it?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so it's a little flower.
That's so lovely.
Yeah. So, yeah. So like I said, do dragonflies. I'll show you my dragonfly if that will show through. Maybe not. Away. Oh, that's because I don't have that. Can you see the dragonfly?
We can.
That's my latest design. I'm just real happy
Beautiful.
with it. But it takes a lot of attempts. The hardest one I do is like 3 little girls holding hands.
Yeah,
That
I've got that here. Should I grab it?
yes,
Yep.
yeah, that
Okay.
one is rare because haven't done any since.
Do my best to get close and not get a
Oh,
glare.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
there they are. Yeah, so I usually have a pile of about 10 that didn't work out before I'll find one that does
yeah.
work. Their legs will be too fat or their heads will be too small or something. So yeah, I think I saw Pat Bruder. I think she did one that had 5. So I want to try it, but boy, you'd have to find a piece of really thin birch bark to be able to do that. But yeah, those are my little
I also have
babies.
one of your this is one of
Oh,
your lightings. I'm gonna do my best with the glare here. But yeah,
yeah,
this is, and if you can see in there, there's flowers, there are dragon flies, there are
flies, turtles.
turtles, all sorts of things. So this must be one, because it's so large, that you
Yeah,
folded in multiple sections and sort
yeah,
of worked on it like that.
yeah. Yes, that one, there's only 3 pieces. They all came from the same birch bark, and I've never been able to peel one that large. What is about 12 by 14 or 14 by something? I've never been able to peel another piece of bark. And it took me probably weeks to peel that because if it would start to stick, the little knobs, I would take a pin and pick it up and just keep peeling it slowly. I was just terrified. So and then it took me a long time to sit and look at it. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I have one that is still blank, but the other one, you have one. The other one is, what is the island? Madeline Island?
Hmm.
The museum there, she bought one. And then the other one is blank. And what I want to do with that one is all dragonflies, just as many dragonflies as I can put on that piece, just nothing but dragonflies. So I keep looking at it and then putting it away like, oh, I can't do this. So even after I can open it up and look at it, and then I can fold it, say, like you just said, in another corner right here, and bite another design in the corner right here. Fold this corner and bite a different design in that corner. So there's just so, some of these pieces. I mean, some of these research papers said that they folded as many as 12 times.
Wow.
I don't think you can.
Yeah.
I've tried like I fold it once, twice, 4, 5. 5 times and it gets thick. There's no way you'd have to sharpen your tooth or something. So I think they're kind of off on that. But you can fold it all kinds of different ways, which is just fun. So we just experiment with it.
Well,
Yep.
it's beautiful. I wanted to talk also because you are also an author, like a researcher, an
Yep.
educator, an author, now a children's book author,
Yeah.
and you're a poet, a very accomplished poet. And one one of my favorite pieces that we have of yours is we've got this piece has the
Oh,
dragonflies.
yes.
Yep,
Yeah.
and then it also has a laser engraved
Yep.
poem in there
Yep.
as well. I was wondering if you do you see your poetry as complementary to some of your other work that you do? Is it an art form in and of itself? Does it is there some crossover? How do you see it within your whole realm, your whole?
Yeah. Well, the cool thing about that piece too that I want to bring up is I think I did dragonflies on there, and then in the poem I talk about dragonflies. Yep. But there's also thunderbirds that are in
Mhm.
the bark. And so I think maybe you had a piece too, but you can see
Yep.
here's the wings, and this one she has a huge beak. So the thunderbird is like coming at you. She's mad. She was mad at Nana Bajou for stealing the feathers off her babies. It's a longer story, and it's usually told when there's snow upon the ground, and there's a little bit of snow out here. And so he crawled into a tree, and then they scratched at the tree, and so that's how these markings are on the birch bark. And also, the longer the marks, the older the tree is. So in honor, or to remember her babies, she put thunderbirds into all of the birch bark. So when I peel bark off the tree, you can just see all kinds of little baby thunderbirds. Now, I didn't know that until I was at a show, Swami, what's that art show there in Minneapolis? And there's a gal there that told me that story.
Yeah.
Yeah, she told me that story. So I have so much fun when I'm working with students, because you can actually feel the thunderbird's beak. There's a big beak there, and the kids are just in awe of that. So what I was able to do, and I'm almost able to, I'm going to peel over that, and then I have. So then part of the poem is also about thunderbirds. And then I found a guy in Fargo that did the laser. Louise Erdrich I think she had typed on her birch bark, and I tried that and it didn't work very well. So by golly, I found someone that would laser my poem. So there's only a few of those left. I'm not in Fargo anymore. So that was so cool. The other cool thing is, I'm working with Suzanne Kelly with North Dakota State University Press, and she's the one that published my academic book as a professor about boarding schools, stringing rosaries. So she was seeing me, post on Facebook and so on, and she said, well, how about we do a chapbook of poems, and you teach my students how to do a little square, 2-inch square piece of birch bark, and they'll put it into the cover. So I think there was 312 of these books that were made. They sold out, NDSU sold out, and so did Amazon. I think I have about 3 books that I would sell. They're $25 if someone wanted to inbox me, was interested. But how unique, that was her vision. And I couldn't figure it out with it. Okay, I'll try it. So we taught the students, I think there was about 9 of them, how to do this. And this is hand done on like a printing press that's over 100 years old. I got to watch them the big wheel, and they take it out, then they put a piece in it. It was so cool. And then she gave me one of the wooden blocks. They actually have to put all the little letters in a wooden block. And then usually they're broken when you have something like this, unlimited, but she was selling them. So I have about 9 poems in here that are about birch bark. And then this little piece here. So this is so cool. Who would have thought?
I would love it if you would read a poem. Is it that we put you on the spot? Would you read one about birch bark?
I will. There's a couple of them. I'll read this one because it's about Jim Northrup. Do you remember Jim?
He
passed away. I just love him. So this is Gathering Birch Bark for Jim Northrup. He gave directions to his maple sugar camp trail and handed me his favorite knife. The forest closed in quickly, trees forming a canopy above. My granddaughter falls behind, head bent over her phone. What the heck are you doing? Tweeting where we're at. Then a tall birch, a silver pillar just off the muddy trail, an offering of tobacco prayers, a smooth cut and a layer of bark unwraps, then instantly scrolls to its original shape. Turning to head back, I can't see my granddaughter, and I cry out. She replies, leaves camouflaging her. Unnerved by the dense forest, the fading translucent light, we head back to the car, take the wrong trail. My hairs prickle with panic. Do you have a compass on that thing? We double back, reach the road. Dizzy from adrenaline rush, I head to the hotel instead of camp. The next morning, I return his blade. Oh, what? I thought you were lost. I would have missed my knife. That's Jim.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
So
I would
read one more, just the last one. This is called birch bark biting, and I think it's the one that is on the that you have there. So I study the spring peeled bark gathered when leaves unfolded. Thunderbirds, wings spread wide, gaze back at me. Peel the amber bark into thin layers, careful not to tear claw marks. Place the folded bark in my mouth, biting down with eye teeth. Closed eyes see designs. unfold a flower, turtle, or dragonfly. Hold it to the light. Feathery bite marks glow through transparent wings. Yeah, that's cool.
Very cool. Just beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I miss you, Denise. It's so nice to
I
spend
know.
time with you.
Yeah.
We have a little bit of time for some questions from the audience, if we have any. If we don't, that's all right. We'll just keep chatting. And if you are watching, you're joining us, and you're watching, and you have questions, please leave them in the chat box. Okay. So, Denise, Joelle asks you, is there anything special you have to do to prepare the bark?
Just peel it real thin. And that's where we learn patience. A lot of patience, and like I said, you have to be in a good way. I find it healing. I lost a grandbaby 6 years ago, and I went into some pretty deep grieving. I made myself very ill. But part of what I did, Ben, and I don't think I ever told you this, was that in order to pull myself out of it, I made myself apply for that residency grant. And then I'll never forget the call from you. I was busy. I was dyeing porcupine quills on the stove when you called. But so the healing part of this for me, and I've done workshops with healing poetry along with doing birch bark peeling, is that you can't be crying when you put that in your mouth, because of all your saliva and so on. So you have to stop crying. You have to be in a good way. So then I started doing shows. So birch bark literally pulled me out from, my doctor said I was literally dying of grief. So I owe a lot to birch bark and to that residency. So the only thing, well, of course, when we go out to gather the bark in the spring, we wear a skirt, and then we offer tobacco, and we offer a prayer for every tree to give back and tell them that we don't mean harm, that we're going to do good things with this bark. So that's the preparation, and that means for me driving to Michigan. Pat Cruz used to take us out also, but we're also afraid of what is that? That little wood tick, that a disease. So there's, we have to dress and spray and so on. So it's Pat would usually just go out and get the bark for me, but my friend in Michigan, I like to go out with him, and we also gather swamp tea when we were out there with him, and I'd never seen it actually growing out in the wild, so that was so cool. So that's otherwise the preparation is I like to sit outside, like I said, in the heat and where it's warm, and just spend time peeling. It's just a very, very healing time for me.
Well, that is really, really, really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. Before we get to this question, I'm just going to ask you, if you do that right, if you harvest correctly, you don't harm the tree. Isn't that right?
Yeah, right. It grows back. The bark will grow back. And Pat Cruz said that you can even use a second growth bark in his art. And I think that's sort of what might be even on the back of this one might be second growth bark.
Yep.
Yeah. No, we never harmed the tree. One of the first times at that workshop, the art show there that we just talked about in Minneapolis, some non-native gal came up and she was just horrified because I had the big rows of bark and stuff that I was showing them everything. So you kill that tree, how can you do that? Indians are supposed to love nature. Like, oh, get a grip here, girl. So that's an important part, Ben. Thanks for mentioning that. We do not harm the birch tree, and many of us will only use the bark of trees that have fallen down and are dead. And if it can still be peeled. There's another that reminds me too, something else I learned is that a long time ago, we used to wrap our bodies in birch bark before burying. So I'm thinking of putting it in my will that I want to be wrapped in birch bark and then throw me in the hole. And you think about it, when you see a birch bark tree that's dead, the wood is rotted out, but the bark is still strong. So that would be wrapped around our bodies, and our bodies go back to dust anyway. So that's so cool. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, Megan asks about the emerald ash borer is killing many of the ash trees in the U.S. making it difficult for Indigenous artists. Are there environmental threats to birch trees that will affect future artists, like other invasive species or climate change?
Sadly, there is. I went to talk to the forestry department because we are a boreal forest here in the Turtle Mountains. And I went to talk to the forestry department because I wanted to ask them to help me plant more birch trees because so many of our birch trees are cut down for firewood. And he said there is a brown beetle birch bark borer, something like that, a brown beetle. And I thought, oh no, and it is killing our trees around here in the Turtle Mountains. My trees so far are healthy, my 2 trees, but so what he wanted to do this spring was he was going to order 200 birch trees, and there's a patch in the Turtle Mountains where I was going to get students that I work with, and we were going to plant 200 birch trees and see if they could grow free of this beetle. Then COVID hit, so we weren't able to do that. So I still want to do that. There was also someone that called me from New Mexico, but he's originally from Colorado, but he wants to work with conservationists or the forestry department and the community college to come up and do some work with birch bark trees. I can't remember what all was involved, but it was some scientific work with just trying to make sure the birch trees come back strong again. So when I do work here, when I do workshops here, I said, please don't go out and peel the birch trees here in the Turtle Mountain. I think they're just too fragile to peel. So we need to do something. It takes a while for birch tree to grow, and usually they like to grow by water, so they take a lot of water. Like if I was to plant another one in my yard, it takes a lot of water. So it takes a long time for them to grow to be old, like my grandma trees out here. Yeah, so we do have something that is eating our trees, sadly.
Okay. Katie asks you, do you harvest the bark in the springtime, then peel it in thin layers in the summer when it's hot?
Well, it just, it doesn't have, I can peel it in the winter too. So that's just me. I just like to sit outside and peel. But you can peel any time of the year. It doesn't have to be hot. I just like to be outside because we have 9 months of having to stay inside here, way up north. But you can peel it any time. So, yeah.
So Cole, and this is something that I'm really glad you brought this up, Cole, Red Horse, who's another one of our artists in residence that we've worked with here. Hi, Cole. What was it like to sort of revitalize this art form? Because essentially that's what you're doing. It was in a big way it's lost when not a lot of people are doing it. Was it what he asked is was it heavy work? Was it hard? Was it what was your experience like to try to bring this back?
Well, what was fun is that if you go onto YouTube, there's a couple videos. So the video that you did, so once, and then I talked to the tribal newspaper, and then I just did free workshops. Didn't charge anybody. There was a generation art place where we did a lot of art. Artists would come in and do different workshops with the people here in the Turtle Mountains. So no, it wasn't. Anybody that wanted to come could do it. Like I said, I didn't gather the bark here, so I'd bring bark to the workshop and give it to the participants. So I'm still doing that. Of course, COVID hit now, so I'll not be able to meet in person, but we've got some really good videos up on YouTube and I'll show anyone that's interested. Anyone that comes knocking at my door and saw my artwork is, how do you do that? Well, sit down. Here, I'll show you. Sharpen up your tooth, eh? So no, it wasn't really heavy work. Yeah, it was absolutely fun. I enjoy every minute of working with bark. So I was going to show, so for instance, I did these are little earrings that I sell too. And these are, again, they're dragonflies. So there's quill dragonfly. And then I just make some little earrings. So I'll probably be putting, I don't do Etsy, and I have a website, but I don't know how to charge people or anything. So I'm wanting to do some more beadwork earrings on these and some more birch bark. So I do bite like little turtles and dragonflies, bitings too, and bead them. And then just for fun, one thing, the travel, you gave us money to travel through that. And I got to go to the Washington, D.C., to the American Indian Museum and saw bitings there that just blew me away. That's where I learned they were used for maps and so on. And then I went up to the Canadian Museum of History. and there is an elder's work there. Her name is Angelique Marasti,
Yep.
and she is the grand dame of birch bark biting. And she would bite like she would bite a scene of an altar, a priest, and a Christmas tree and presents. She would bite that. She would bite elephants.
Uh-huh.
People, I guess people would just come and ask her, tourists would come and ask her to bite. So I saw a birch bark book there. So this is a little book, it's like a little journal with birch bark. So I just have fun with doing different things like this. It's just fun. Yeah.
Lovely. Oh, so Ned, our friend Ned, is asking, can you talk a bit more about how you taught yourself to see the designs in your head while biting, or what's that process like?
I don't know. I just do it. And it takes a lot of practice. So like I can see that I want to do a dragonfly, and then it wouldn't turn out. I was actually trying to copy Kelly Church's dragonfly, and I just couldn't do it. And it was so simple, but I just couldn't do it. So finally one day I would buy, and then all of a sudden I did one that became my own. You're not supposed to copy anyone else's work anyway, and it's hard to copy with birch bark biting anyway. Finally, all of a sudden there it was, my own dragonfly that but it took a lot of practice. It takes practice. All I can say is that when I close my eyes, it's like, we bead on velvet and velveteen black, and that's what when I close my eyes, it's dark like that. It reminds me of black velveteen or velvet, and they just show up. So I think, like I said, I think it's a gift. Yeah, kind of spiritual.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Diane is asking about advice as to how to work with larger pieces of birch bark when biting.
Well, like Ben showed you that big one. You just you can fold it and bite it, and then open it up and fold it again in the corner, and bite again. Open it up again and bite it again. Sometimes it was so big, I actually like gag reflex, like I stuck it. It was too big of a piece, so I have to work in small. That's probably shouldn't have said that, but anyway. So yeah, you can just fold it different ways. So you just take a big piece and open it up and keep folding it different ways in different parts of the corner. Yeah, and you can use a huge piece. Like that one. I think it was about 12 by 14.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Megan is asking that she once read that, like the maple tree, birch trees can be tapped for syrup and sugar. Have you ever done this or tried birch sugar?
I haven't, but birch trees can be tapped. Yep. For it takes a lot more. It's a lot more work, I think, than maple. But maple trees, of course, are very common. We don't have any here in the Turtle Mountains. Just like we don't have wild rice. We're trying to. A long time ago, we did. It was part of a wild rice here that we had it here in the Turtle Mountains because we have hundreds of lakes. But birch trees, I understand, have been tapped for sugar, but I haven't. In my research, it says that they were tapped for sugar, but I haven't tried it. It's a lot of work.
Well, what do you think the future of this art form is? If it were up to you, would you like to see this, practiced widely in, by different communities?
Yeah, sure. Like all the people, wherever birch trees grow, absolutely. And like I said, Kelly was so giving in sharing her tricks of the trade with me that I will teach anybody to how to bite. Yeah, so I hope it does continue. I hope more people are open to doing the art and selling their art.
Me too. Is it all right if we talk about your upcoming book, your children's book?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Can you tell us about a little bit about it?
Oh, yeah. It's been well. The story started with my daughter when she was 4 or 5 years old, and she's like 47 right now. So it's been rolling around in my head for over 40 years. But I finally sat down and wrote it down, and I think I talked to you. I said I'm shopping. I want to have a story, a children's story, and I want to shop it around. And you said, "Well, hello, there's Shannon Penfeather here," and so emailed her, and I think I sent a query letter, and she met with me, and she said, well, I'm going to bring it to acquisitions. And she did, and they liked it, except it needed changing. She said now that, it's only 700 words, but she said that it needed to have something that needed to be resolved, an issue for this little girl that was going to be dancing for the first time in a powwow. She's having her coming into the arena ceremony. So that was easy to fix. So we fixed it, then we went through a few other small revisions, and they accepted it. So then the next step was finding an artist. And I thought, and she did too, that it would fit a watercolor artist. So we vetted, I understand that she vetted 3 artists, and one of them was Angie Erdrich. And Angie won. So she's been working for over a year on the drawings. It's not easy. It took about a year of back and forth to get the story right, the 700 words, and then to vet the artist, and then for her to have some time to be able to do it. So it wasn't going to come out until 2022. And I think another book sort of got, they either didn't make the deadline, something happened. So my book's been moved up, it looks like, till next spring. But I'm so excited.
That's
I mean,
exciting.
who thought, I could be a children's book writer? So, but it's a cute little story.
Well, yeah, and it's your first children's book, and it's one of our first. We're just really moving into that area as a
Yeah.
book. So we got some really. You're joining some lovely company with Hungry Johnny and some of the Bow Wow.
Bow wow, pow wow. I love it.
And,
And
some of the other
Jonathan.
ones that we've been
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. So it's
We
a
are
good experience. It's a fun experience. And I have another children's book rattling around my brain right now that I've got outlined. So I'm going to send it other places other than Minnesota, but yeah, I've got some other ideas.
Well, that's great. So I'll just, if there are there any other questions from the audience? It doesn't look like it. None are popping up on my screen. I just really wanted to thank you
Yep.
for taking the time and doing this today. It's been really, really nice to see you. I know we are kind of we're kind of related. We're kind of family.
Yeah. Yep.
Coral and my daughters. You got a chance to talk to them the other day when we were
Yes.
prepping for this. It's nice to see you, and it's
Yep.
I just want to say I know it's been really it's hard for a lot of us. We're all
it is.
all
It's
kind
gonna
of
get
solitary these days, and I know you're up there.
Yeah.
But
It's
you're also,
just it's gonna be tougher in the winter. At least in the summer we could social distance on. We had a bunch of us that all had big decks that we could go visit.
Yeah.
Now we can't do that anymore. So I don't look forward to January to June.
well, we'll have to keep we'll just keep zooming and keep FaceTiming and
Yeah.
keep you in our lives. I do want to mention too that we have a there's going to be a link in the comments to a short survey. Will take you as an audience member about 3 minutes to fill out if you're interested, and there will be this program, a recording of this program, available and archived on Facebook and YouTube. And next month in December, we'll be doing another one of these with Gwen Westerman and Erin Griffin. Yeah, we're going to be talking about their work doing Dakota ribbon work applique and some other textiles. So,
well, thank you, Ben, so much. The artist in residency changed my life as an artist. Absolutely changed my life. So, and it's just been wonderful. Like I said, it's a very healing and very beautiful old traditional art. So thank you so much, and thank the Historical Society for that grant.
well, thank you. You're amazing to work with.
Yeah, cool.
All right. Well,